And now to welcome Greg Skelton, Chief Executive of Wellington Electricity. It's the distribution company that supplies the electricity network connecting the capital city and its surrounding region. Greg's been the Chief Executive of it since 2009. Before that, he was CEO of Alpine Energy Limited. He's also held other senior management roles in the industry, as well as being past President of the EEA and past Director at Aceto. 30 years experience in the fields of production engineering, electrical engineering and business management, and amongst his qualifications he is also Fellow of the Institute of Professional Engineers of New Zealand. They're always the most interesting people to hear from, I find. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Catherine, and looks wonderful to be here, and what a busy room of really interested people in EVs. I'd just like you to put your hands together once again for Mike. He has mentioned that he's going to retire, and I can't understand someone 21 years of age with 48 years of experience who want to do that. So Mike, congratulations, all the best. Just 4 topics from me today. Obviously, as a CEO, I need to talk about health and safety and those changes, opportunities around electric vehicles that we're looking at, and also some of the new models for business that we'll need to put in place to make that happen, and obviously we'll lead into questions. A wee bit about us. You can probably see most of this on our website, but we are a lines company, poles and wires, and generally quite happy to look at supporting new investment in electricity for things that are going to make Wellington a better place to live. Just around health and safety, we get a lot of things done as Kiwis. We're very innovative, number 8 wire, but sometimes our attitudes are just a wee bit casual. So we embrace the new change to legislation. No, Mike, it's not electric. And just make sure that we play our part with the people that we work with and make sure we can get the message across. So it's really a move away from where we've been in the 92 OSH Act, where most of the hazards were put back to the workers in the field. And really it's a collection, if you like, of businesses, contractors and workers all having their responsibilities. I have a slide of Malcolm's favourite company, BP. And just a warning for people running business that don't be complacent about your results and your figures. BP went 7 years without a lost time injury, and then they decided to cap the well, and then all these things started to happen in a bad way. Each party in the capping the well process decided the party before them had done their job. Chelsea, you know this person. They asked him why that happened on his watch. He said, because we trusted BP. What would you do differently? We'd actually check, trust and check. And that's one of the mottos that's really useful in our business is we trust all our contractors are going to have a great day, but sometimes you just need to make sure that we check that everything's in place to do that. And quite often you'll find that you're at your most vulnerable when you feel the safest, and it's really a matter of having that chronic unease. Anything around that BP Deepwater Horizon failure you want to know, some papers written by Professor Andrew Hopkins around that, which are very fascinating. Back on stream, on topic, Mike's covered this, 80% renewable, and that's really a great platform. We're about 4th in the world behind Iceland, Norway and Austria around being just about fully renewable, and that's fantastic. Our lakes, our big hydro systems are really great big batteries, and with the wind development in New Zealand, they're really just a whole bunch of battery chargers as they dispatch to the market at 0 cost. Then the hydro backs up and fills the lake. So it's like charging a battery. What would you prefer to do? I suppose my early views as a lines company is 7 cents to the market for hydro is much, much cheaper and more efficient than 26 cents for PV. So that's a bit of a no-brainer. However, when you see some of the new business models coming out around the world, there is a place for PV. And why are we interested in looking at electric vehicles? Well, covered before, it's really the energy mix. 46% of our energy is fuel oil. And most of that, Mike's covered that off, 82% goes into our cars and out our tailpipe. I can see Chelsea's looking through the window to see who's driving, and David's still keen to see where the Apple girl's got to. So what do we do as a lines company? We've been storing energy for decades. In fact, the 50s, when Mike was in short pants, it was really around taking energy out of the peak period and storing it into hot water storage systems, or the easy way, or night store heaters. And that was the reason behind that was to keep the big thermal plants running. That's kind of changed a wee bit now with some of those thermal plants not occurring, but if we don't fill up these nighttime periods, then we're going to end up with a bigger peak. And a bigger peak between 5 and 9 at night means we've got to spend more money on bigger wires. Some of our sister companies, particularly in Melbourne, for only 20% of the time in the year, 20 hours actually, 20 hours of the year is when 10% of the energy gets used. So it's quite wasteful on efficient infrastructure investment. 10.5 terawatt hours of consented renewables is ready to go, should we need them to support that more energy, and 30 cents a litre. I'm going to challenge that figure as I come through my presentation. A lot of the lines companies are adopting electric vehicles. They see the sense of it, and they're starting to just experiment and expand as to how these look in their fleets. No different for us. We've shifted our fleet across. A bit of range anxiety you can see there with 3 Outlanders and 2 Leafs. But we've also broken a bit of a glass ceiling because all these vehicles are leased. We brought a couple and then put them back to the lease company because we weren't too sure as to where that was going to go, and particularly brokered the discussion around what is the final cost of a vehicle with a battery that may be sort of running for 6 years. They've discovered that, and thankfully it still meets this dynamic of how the economics stack up. So you might look at the left-hand side and say, don't want to buy an electric vehicle, it's too expensive. But over the life cycle, it's much cheaper. So there's a lot of operational savings by getting into electric vehicles. As far as charging systems go, and how we do this publicly, we met a guy called Ed Cager from Southern California Edison when Wellington City hosted a very early electric vehicle meeting. And one of the first questions we asked him is, how many public chargers do we need? And he said, doing it for 14 years, not many. He said, most people are wanting to charge their cars when they're actually receiving another service. So just around the corner from us is Pack and Save, and we had a chat to the manager there and said, would you like a couple of electric vehicle chargers? And he said, no way, your electricity is too bloody expensive. And we said, well, you're giving away petrol for 8, 10 cents per litre discounts. This is cheaper than that. He said, oh, okay then. So we've decided to think about strategically who we partner with to put in charging systems, so people, when they're maintaining another service, can actually get something while they shop, which is at no cost to them. And the other simple thing is at 90 minutes time, it's really Pack and Save monitoring who's using that car park, and it's not us. Also, good to see Steve here, Charge.net. So half a dozen other lines companies have partnered with Steve to make sure we do get fast chargers into the areas up and down New Zealand, which is one of Steve's initiatives, and hopefully we'll hear from him. So there are a number of charging sites already being taken in place. This is not an exhaustive list, but by the end of the year, we're hoping to have 4 fast chargers in Wellington. We're hoping to have at least 15 7 kilowatt chargers or equivalent. And there's another 150,000 opportunities of charging at home, noting that we have 167,000 customers, acknowledging some don't have garages. Public transport. This is something that's sort of battered back and forwards amongst Wellingtonians for quite a while now, and it's been probably one of the more difficult discussions that we've had as being one of the providers for this equipment. And it is quite old technology, particularly as Malcolm outlined, when you start looking at some of the substation assets. But it doesn't stop there. There's also a lot of investment in cables, and it's helpful for Malcolm to talk about the difficulty of replacing those. So our contract for supplying is coming to a close, and for the last few years we've just been discussing how we move forward with that. And it's really at that time of disruption when you're at the end of an investment in one technology, whether you want to go forward for the next 50 years with the same technology, risking it could be disrupted sometime in that future. And if you've got 50-year assets you're trying to actually pay for over that lifetime at 2% depreciation, you don't want all of that having to happen in 10 years. That's eye-watering. So we're trying to avoid that. Plenty of opportunities are coming in though. We've looked at some of the technologies from ABB, and there's overhead charging docking stations, and there's also sort of the more standard systems of charging buses when they're put to bed at night. And it's good to see that those opportunities are coming through. And very similar to the health and safety that we opened with in the earlier slides, there's a number of parties involved in public transport. You've got both regional and city councils, ourselves, the cable car with the overhead network, and NZ Bus for the rolling transport. And one of the issues around health and safety that we did work on quite carefully is around how the overhead, the substations and the bus people actually manage when things get tripped. So that's been a very valuable experience as well. But it is about consulting, it's about cooperating, and it's about coordinating. Now, Zane will talk later today and talk about the right speed that Infratil's put in, and also how that's coming through. So a fantastic system to get this kicked into place. It's a wee bit like having our vehicle fleet with some plug-in hybrids initially and some EVs to see how it's going to run. So that's a great development that we're seeing coming into Wellington, and obviously these very smart stuff that's happening in that space. So fantastic to get some New Zealand technology back to New Zealand via California. Also good to see Carbridge here as well, and interesting to see the bigger bus battery systems coming in, full battery, giving a 300 kilometre range and potentially 15 hours of service. So as outlined before, 84 cells of battery fully monitored while it's being charged offers a very good opportunity in a second life, and the warranty periods for some of these are outstanding with 8 years. We're certainly looking forward to this, obviously from a bus charging point of view, but also where we can use the batteries in our network. A battery that's 65% charged is still very valuable for us because it's coming in around 200 kilowatts of capacity. And also, we'll be also involved in looking at how these buses charge and also some of the data around that. But how do we fit these into our network when we charge them at night? And it's pretty simple. There's absolutely tons of capacity. If we look at the bus depot down in Kaifawhara, charging 30 buses overnight hardly makes a blip on the network, mainly because the network's at a time that it's actually not doing too much work between the hours of about 9 o'clock through to about 7 o'clock in the morning. But to do all these things and incentivise change, we have to go first back and have a look at some of our business models. At the moment, you pay for your electricity by the volume you use, and when things are getting more efficient, that's not really going to be that flash for keeping on investing in assets to maintain the level of service they're giving you. So the variable cents per kilowatt hour and the fixed cents per day is going to need to change. So how do we change that in a cost-reflective way to make sure people actually use the electricity at the right time or conserve electricity so we don't have to be like our sister company in Melbourne by having 20 hours a year using 10% of the energy. And a lot of that is thinking about putting in an incentive around the peak congestion period to make sure that people understand there is a congestion yet you're creating by using energy at this time, and therefore making decisions about using energy where you can at a different period. So that will shrink down the idea of charging fully on kilowatt hours or volume, and put in a component that's demand. So that'll be balance between those two components. And it has a benefit too. With one of the problems of solar PV in Wellington is the sun shines when there isn't the load on the network that we need it to actually help us with. So if you've got PV panels on your house, it really isn't going to help the network reduce its peak demand, because we are a winter peaking network in the evening. So that's not really a big help for us. However, as technology develops, we are expecting to see batteries start to become a household commodity. So if you're smart enough and your battery at home is storing charge, and you've got the right price signal to actually pass that battery energy back to the network in the peak, it's going to be quite a little windfall for people who are doing that. That's going to be quite a benefit. The idea behind that peak will lower as your battery displaces, and you'll play a much smaller demand element. Now, that's a few years away. So let's have a think about what we're doing now. This is just a bit of a summary on making sure that we're shifting across to cost-reflective price signals and added value services that lines companies are going to be involved in with their consumers. But right now, we've actually changed our line charge for electric vehicle owners. And this is where I said I'd challenge the 30 cents per litre for vehicles. If you charge your vehicle at night, you can actually get it done for 15 cents. Now, that's a bit of a windfall. Why would we charge 15 cents? We charge 15 cents primarily because our component is 2 cents for the network, because it's not doing much at that time and we want to fill it up. The rest of that is really made up by the energy sold by energy retailers. And that's something that's important for us to make sure we send the right price signal for people to ensure they charge their cars at the right time. We will be amending this line charge by making sure we go with a demand charge, and that'll be part of that rollout of new charges, and we'll monitor that pretty carefully. It also means that you've got this arbitrage between 30 cents and 15 cents. So if you're an electric vehicle owner, you actually have the benefit of reducing your demand charge over time as the new vehicles come out, as they get more used to putting vehicles back to the grid. At the moment it's a bit taboo with the battery technology where it is now, but over time you'll be able to actually sell your energy back at a time that's called for by your lines company. And that's going to be quite useful to do that. There are challenges though. If we are looking at trying to get into cost-effective pricing, it does need the market to fully cooperate. We can't do it by ourselves. It's great to see steps being made now by the Commerce Commission to shift away their form of control from a price cap to a revenue cap. Won't go into that now. And we're having to think about new business models, but we also need to get retailers to actually understand that these models can go forward to customers, and also the information that we require out of smart meters. And again, we're kind of a silent order really. We just let the retailers deal with the customers and we just keep the lights on. But we are going to need to educate and engage with customers a lot more so we can adapt to these new technologies. So just imagine a world of turbines and large batteries second-hand, and imagine what we can do with those on our network. Or just imagine what we can do if someone had a spare lake somewhere, and rather than put in any foundations, we can just float a set of solar panels on the top of that, and we could take that daytime sunshine and we could store it so we can use that back into our network at night. So all of these are opportunities that start coming through once we start looking at electric vehicle fleets and networks start looking at second lives for batteries. There is a bit of a lost opportunity with smart meters, and we'll be pushing pretty hard to make sure they are leveraged to their max. At the moment they just record the data that you use for kilowatt hours. We think there's a whole lot of other uses, particularly signalling to us when you're without supply, and those lucky ones among you with electric vehicles won't be much of a problem. You'll just ride through that, and that'll give us a bit of time to get the power on. But if we take a step further and look at the second life for batteries and using solar to store that around networks. And Wellington's got a few challenges around resilience, and particularly we're a very reliable network. You get the same reliability if you're sitting in the city of Melbourne, but that's mainly because most of our assets are underground. Great for the weather we have, not so great when some of these tectonic plates start to move. So we do need to be prepared for the future of what may happen, that we get some bumps in the night. So if we do have a disruption on a larger part of our network, we will be looking at basically using some of the storage in our network to actually get power back on. But you can see that won't be sufficient because these batteries aren't as large as what we can deliver down our networks, so we do need a wee bit of help. And when we start working with councils who are looking at putting in communication systems for LED lighting, all of a sudden we have another way of actually communicating more closely with our communities about what energy is stored in the house rather than what is just coming down the pipes from our hydro dams and through our network. So we have the ability to actually start to restore larger parts of our network. And as we do, that'll bring the power back on, and essentially that'll get us into a much better period than what we are now. So those are some thoughts from me about where we're heading with electric vehicles, what we're doing to put in charging systems, and where we think this might all be heading to provide a better quality of affordable service to our consumers in Wellington. Thank you very much.